The red glow of emergency lights painted the neighborhood crimson that night. Sirens wailed through the darkness as families huddled in their doorways, watching in horror as the chemical plant on the edge of town burned with unnatural intensity. Among the first responders who rushed toward the inferno when everyone else fled was Battalion Chief Michael Donovan, a 20-year veteran of the Oakwood Fire Department. He never returned home. It was the sort of explosion that makes national news for a day before fading into statistics. 5 firefighters lost in heroic rescue attempt, the headlines proclaimed. To Amber Donovan, just 14 when it happened, the loss wasn't a headline. It was the collapse of her entire world. Her father had always been invincible, the hero in a uniform who could conquer any blaze. Until he couldn't. Sarah Donovan stood in their living room, surrounded by fellow firefighter wives, as the fire chief delivered the news. His words seemed to float around her rather than penetrate. No survivors possible, catastrophic structural failure, recovery of remains unlikely. Amber watched from the staircase, her knuckles white as she gripped the banister, as her mother sank to her knees in slow motion. "He promised he'd come home," Sarah whispered over and over. "Michael always kept his promises." "Sorry, but promises burn in infernos, don't they?" The funerals were held with empty caskets. 5 monuments to lives given in service, with only helmets and badges where bodies should have been. The investigation concluded that the explosion had been so intense that it left almost nothing to recover. The families were told to find closure in memories, since physical remains were impossible. Amber wore her father's oversized jacket to the service, swimming in its folds, breathing in his lingering scent of pine aftershave as if it might somehow keep him alive. It was a closed chapter, a tragic ending to the story of Michael Donovan, devoted father, husband, and firefighter, or so they thought. 12 years can change everything. Amber was now 26, working as a trauma nurse in the same hospital where they'd once treated her father for minor burns and smoke inhalation over the years. Sarah had never remarried, keeping Michael's memory alive through a foundation for children of fallen first responders. Their lives had rebuilt around the absence, like a city rebuilt after disaster, different but standing. The anniversary of the explosion always brought the pain back, with surprising freshness. 12 years exactly since she'd heard her father's voice, felt his bear hug, or listened to his ridiculous dad jokes over breakfast. Amber sat alone in her apartment that evening, scrolling mindlessly through social media, trying to distract herself from the weight of the day. The algorithm of Facebook has its own mysterious ways. Perhaps it was the increased activity on the memorial page for the fallen firefighters that day, or perhaps just random chance that caused that particular suggested friendship to appear on her screen. The profile picture was blurry, a distant figure on a beach back to the camera facing an ocean sunset. But it was the name that made Amber's phone slip from her suddenly numb fingers. Michael Donovan. It was a common enough name, she told herself, heart hammering against her ribs. There must be thousands of Michael Donovans in the world. This meant nothing, but her trembling fingers had already tapped on the profile, hungry for information, for confirmation that this was just a coincidence. The profile was mostly private, created only 3 years prior. No friends she recognized. Location listed simply as Costa Rica. Very few public photos, and none that showed a clear face. It could be anyone. Some middle-aged man living his life in Central America, with no idea that his name was causing a young woman in Oakwood to feel like she couldn't breathe. But then she saw it. The cover photo, a stretch of pristine beach, palm trees swaying, and perched casually on a driftwood log, what appeared to be a worn red helmet, a firefighter's helmet. It was late, past midnight, but Amber called her mother anyway. "Mom," she said, her voice cracking, "I need you to look at something." Sarah had aged gracefully in 12 years, silver threads now dominating her once auburn hair. She squinted at Amber's phone screen, reading glasses perched on her nose, shaking her head slightly. "It's probably nothing, honey. Just someone with Dad's name. Look at the helmet in the cover photo, Mom." Sarah zoomed in, her hand beginning to tremble. "That could be any firefighter's helmet. There are millions of them in the world." "Zoom in on the side," Amber instructed, her voice tight. There, barely visible in the fading sunlight captured in the photograph, was a decal, a cartoon Dalmatian, the mascot of Oakwood Fire Station 7, Michael's station, Michael's personal helmet decoration. "It's not possible," Sarah whispered, but her face had gone ashen. "They told us. The explosion. There was nothing left." "Someone's using his identity," Amber said firmly, trying to find a rational explanation. "Some sick person who knew Dad and is pretending to be him. Or—" Sarah couldn't finish the sentence. The word hung between them, dangerous and electrifying. "Or he's alive." That night began a journey that would unravel everything they thought they knew. Amber couldn't confront the profile directly. What would she even say? "Hi, are you my dead father?" Instead, she created a new profile, using her middle name and her mother's maiden name, Catherine Jenkins, anonymous enough to investigate without revealing herself. She sent a friend request to the Michael Donovan account, accompanied by a generic message. "Hi there. I think we might have mutual connections from Oakwood. Great to find you on here." For 3 days, nothing happened. The request sat unanswered. Amber checked hourly, jumping every time her phone chimed with a notification. On the 4th day, just as she was losing hope, a response came. "Sorry, you must have me confused with someone else. I'm not from Oakwood." Brief, dismissive, but he'd responded, and he hadn't denied knowing where Oakwood was. "My mistake," Amber wrote back, fingers trembling so badly she had to retype several words. "I thought you might be the Michael Donovan who used to work for the fire department there. The helmet in your photo looked familiar." This time the response took less than an hour. "I collect Firefighter memorabilia. Just a hobby. You must be thinking of someone else." A reasonable explanation. A perfectly innocent clarification. So why did it feel like the floor was tilting beneath Amber's feet? Why did each word feel crafted to deflect rather than inform? "Of course. Sorry to bother you," she replied. Then, taking a risk. "That helmet looked exactly like one that belonged to a firefighter who died in an explosion years ago. It even has the same station mascot decal. Quite a coincidence." No response came that day, or the next. On the 3rd day, Amber checked the profile again, only to discover it had disappeared. Searching for Michael Donovan yielded nothing. The profile had either been deactivated or had blocked her. That reaction was not the reaction of someone with nothing to hide. Her mother was skeptical when Amber shared the brief exchange. "Honey, grief makes us see connections that aren't there. This person probably just got creeped out by a stranger asking about their photo. Then why delete the entire profile? Why not just block me and move on?" Sarah had no answer for that. Amber couldn't let it go. The seed of doubt had been planted, and it grew with ferocious speed. She began researching the explosion again, reading old news articles, investigation reports, anything she could find. She contacted former colleagues of her father, asking innocuous questions about that night, listening for hesitations or inconsistencies. Most were forthcoming, sharing memories of Michael with obvious affection. But one name kept appearing in her conversations: Deputy Chief Frank Sullivan, Michael's best friend and the last person to report seeing him alive that night. According to the official report, Sullivan had ordered Michael and his team into the east wing of the facility just before the secondary explosion. Sullivan himself had been thrown clear by the blast, suffering severe injuries but surviving. He'd been the one to confirm that Michael and the others had been in the section that was completely obliterated. Now retired, Sullivan still lived in Oakwood. Amber arranged to meet him, ostensibly to talk about contributing to her mother's foundation. They met at a quiet diner on the outskirts of town, Sullivan arriving with a noticeable limp, a permanent reminder of that night. "You look just like him," Sullivan said, giving Amber a quick hug. Same eyes, same determined look. They exchanged pleasantries, discussed the foundation, reminisced about Michael. Sullivan seemed genuinely emotional when speaking about his friend. Nothing about his demeanor suggested deception. As their meeting drew to a close, Amber decided to take a calculated risk. "I found something strange recently," she said, sliding her phone across the table with the screenshot of the now-deleted profile. "This was on Facebook. Look at the helmet in the cover photo." Sullivan's face remained neutral as he examined the image, but Amber was watching his eyes. They widened just slightly before he controlled his expression. "Probably just someone who collects fire department memorabilia," he said, pushing the phone back toward her. "Happens all the time. With my dad's specific helmet? The same one with his personal Dalmatian decal?" Sullivan's smile remained fixed, but something had changed in his eyes. A wariness that hadn't been there before. "Amber, it's been 12 years. I know it's hard, but sometimes we see what we want to see. I messaged this account, asked about the helmet. The next day, the entire profile disappeared. Sullivan's coffee cup paused halfway to his lips. He set it down carefully. "What are you suggesting?" "I don't know what I'm suggesting," Amber said, leaning forward. "But something about this doesn't feel right. You were there that night. You were the last person to see him." Sullivan's face hardened. "I lost my best friend that night, Amber. 5 good men died under my command. Do you have any idea what that's like to live with?" "I lost my father," Amber countered, "and now I'm wondering if I really did." "This conversation is over." Sullivan stood abruptly, throwing money on the table. "I understand grief does strange things to people, but this is not healthy, Amber. Let your father rest in peace." He walked out, his limp more pronounced, leaving Amber alone with her suspicions. That night she couldn't sleep. Sullivan's reaction had been defensive, too defensive for someone with nothing to hide. She pulled out her laptop and began digging deeper into the investigation reports from the explosion. Most were publicly available through records requests, though heavily redacted in places. As she read through the technical jargon and bureaucratic language, certain inconsistencies began to emerge. The bodies of 4 firefighters had been accounted for, though in conditions that made identification difficult. But Michael's remains had never been found. The official explanation was that he had been closest to the secondary explosion's epicenter, but that didn't explain why fragments of his equipment hadn't been recovered when pieces of the others had been. And then there was the insurance payout. Sarah had received Michael's life insurance and pension benefits, but Amber discovered that the process had been expedited unusually quickly with minimal investigation. Someone had pushed the paperwork through, bypassing standard protocols for cases with unrecovered remains. That someone had been Frank Sullivan. By morning, Amber had a theory forming, one so outlandish it seemed impossible. Yet it would explain everything. The helmet in the photo, Sullivan's reaction, the expedited benefits, the lack of remains. What if her father hadn't died that night? What if, for reasons she couldn't yet understand, he had used the explosion as cover to disappear? It was unthinkable. The Michael Donovan she knew would never abandon his family, his responsibilities. He was integrity personified, the man who had taught her that character meant doing the right thing, even when no one was watching. But then again, what did a 14-year-old really know about her father's inner life? What secrets might have been hidden behind the hero she had worshipped? Amber needed more information before approaching her mother with these suspicions. She decided to focus on Costa Rica, the location listed on the mysterious profile. If someone was using her father's identity there, perhaps she could find traces. Using her nursing credentials, she requested 2 weeks of emergency leave from the hospital. She told her mother she needed a vacation to clear her head. Within 48 hours, she had booked a flight to San Jose, Costa Rica. It was a desperate move, a shot in the dark. Costa Rica was an entire country. How would she ever find one man who might or might not be her father, who might or might not even be there? She had nothing but a vague location from a deleted social media profile. But Amber had inherited her father's determination. That counted for something. The flight to Costa Rica gave her time to think, to plan her approach. She had brought photographs of her father, both official fire department portraits and casual family snapshots. She had his date of birth, his distinguishing features, including a distinctive burn scar on his right forearm from an early career incident. She had compiled a list of coastal towns to begin her search, focusing on areas popular with American expatriates. What she didn't have was a rational explanation for what she was doing. This was the behavior of someone obsessed, someone unable to accept loss, even after 12 years. Part of her recognized this, yet she couldn't stop. The need to know the truth, whatever it might be, drove her forward. San Jose greeted her with warm air and the scent of unfamiliar blossoms. She spent her first day organizing her search, arranging transportation, and practicing her limited Spanish. By day 2, she was heading toward the Pacific coast, toward the beach towns where American retirees and expatriates often settled. It was in her third coastal town, Playa Hermosa, that she found her first lead. She had been showing her father's photo to shopkeepers, restaurant owners, anyone who might interact regularly with the local expatriate community. Most shook their heads politely, offering sympathetic smiles to the clearly desperate American woman. But the owner of a small beachfront bar paused when she showed him the photograph. Recognition flickered across his face before he controlled his expression. "This man you look for," he said carefully, "he is in trouble." Amber's heart leaped into her throat. "You've seen him?" The man, Miguel according to his name tag, studied her face. "Who are you to him?" "I'm his daughter," Amber said, watching Miguel's reaction closely. Something like sadness passed across his features. "The man I am thinking of, he never mentioned children." The words hit her like a physical blow. "So you do know him? This man in the photo?" Miguel seemed to be having an internal debate. Finally, he sighed. "There is a man who looks like this who comes sometimes. He calls himself Mike. Not Michael, just Mike. He lives up the coast in the next town. Keeps to himself, mostly." "Is he a firefighter?" Amber asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Miguel shook his head. "He fixes boats. Has a small business." "When did he come here?" "Many years ago, 8, maybe 9 years. Not 12, but close enough to be suspicious." "Can you tell me where to find him?" Miguel hesitated again, then seemed to make a decision. "He has a workshop near the marina in Playas del Coco, blue building with a sign that says Mike's Marine Repair. But señorita," he added as Amber turned to leave, "if this man is who you think, maybe there is reason he is here and not there. Maybe some things are better left alone." Amber thanked him and left, her mind racing. Playas del Coco was less than an hour away. She could be there before nightfall. Part of her wanted to rush there immediately, but a growing sense of caution held her back. If this was indeed her father, if he had chosen to disappear, barging in unannounced might cause him to run again. Instead, she checked into a small hotel in Playa Hermosa and spent the evening planning her approach. She would go to the marina, find the workshop, observe from a distance first. She needed to be certain before making contact. Sleep eluded her that night. Every possible scenario played through her mind on repeat. Finding her father alive would mean everything she believed about the past 12 years had been a lie. It would mean he had chosen to leave them, to let them believe he was dead, to miss her high school graduation, her college years, the beginning of her career. It would mean her mother had grieved needlessly, had slept alone in their bed while he built a new life on a distant beach. Could she forgive such a betrayal? Should she? By morning she had no answers, only the determination to find the truth. Playas del Coco was busier than Playa Hermosa, with more tourist infrastructure and a larger marina. Amber found Mike's Marine Repair easily enough, a weathered blue building at the far end of the waterfront, with a simple hand-painted sign. Several boats in various states of repair were scattered around the property. She positioned herself at a cafe across the street, ordering a coffee and keeping her sunglasses on despite the early hour shade. The workshop appeared quiet, no movement visible from her vantage point. She waited, nursing her coffee, ordering a second, then a third as the morning progressed. Shortly after 11, a figure emerged from the workshop, a man in his 60s wiping his hands on a rag. From a distance it was impossible to be certain, but something about his walk, the set of his shoulders, sent a jolt of recognition through Amber. He was thinner than she remembered, his once dark hair now grey and longer than he'd ever worn it. His skin was deeply tanned from years in the tropical sun, but the way he moved, the careful precision with which he locked the workshop door, those were intimately familiar gestures. Amber felt frozen, unable to move from her seat as the man exchanged greetings with several passers-by. Clearly a known and liked figure in the community, he headed toward a small food vendor at the marina's edge, where the proprietor seemed to have his order ready without being asked. This was him. Somehow, impossibly, this was Michael Donovan, her father, alive. She watched him eat his lunch alone, seated on a bench overlooking the water. The casual normality of it struck her as obscene. While they had grieved, held memorial services, cried themselves to sleep, he had been here, eating lunch by the ocean, fixing boats, living a life that didn't include them. Before she had consciously decided to move, Amber found herself walking across the street, her legs carrying her toward the bench. She removed her sunglasses, blinking in the bright sunlight. She stopped a few feet away from him, heart hammering so violently she felt lightheaded. "Dad?" The man turned, a polite smile starting to form, the smile of someone expecting to meet a potential customer. The smile froze, then collapsed entirely as he saw her face. The paper plate of food slipped from his hands, falling unnoticed to the ground. "Amber?" His voice was exactly as she remembered it, though rougher now with age and disuse. In that moment, she knew. The recognition in his eyes was immediate and absolute. This was no case of mistaken identity or extraordinary coincidence. This man was Michael Donovan, her father, A ghost come to life. "You're supposed to be dead," she said, the words coming out flat and hard. He made a small movement as if to reach for her, then stopped himself. His eyes darted around the marina, checking who might be watching. "How did you find me?" he asked, his voice barely audible. "Facebook," Amber said, a hysterical laugh threatening to bubble up. "You got careless with your helmet." Michael closed his eyes briefly. When he opened them, they were filled with a complex mixture of emotions Amber couldn't begin to untangle. "We need to talk," he said, "but not here, not in public." 12 years, Amber said, her voice rising despite herself. 12 years we thought you were dead. Mom still puts flowers on your empty grave. And you've been here, living your life while we... Her voice broke. "Please," he said, standing now, gesturing toward the workshop. "I can explain everything. Just not here." Amber wanted to refuse, wanted to scream at him in this public place, wanted everyone to know what kind of man he really was. But the journalist in her, the part that had driven her investigation this far, needed to hear his explanation. She followed him silently across the street to the workshop. Inside it was organized chaos, tools everywhere, boat parts in various stages of repair, the smell of grease and salt water permeating everything. He led her to a small office in the back, closing the door behind them. "I never thought I'd see you again," he said, staring at her as if memorizing her features. "Look at you, a grown woman now." "Don't," Amber said sharply. "Don't pretend this is some happy reunion. You left us, you let us think you were dead. Why?" Michael sank into a chair, suddenly looking every one of his 62 years. "It's complicated, uncomplicated." He rubbed his face with weathered hands. "I never meant to hurt you or your mother. You have to believe that. I don't have to believe anything you say. You're a liar, a coward who ran away from his family." The words hit their mark. Michael flinched visibly. "I deserve that. I deserve your anger, but please just listen. There were reasons, good reasons. What reason could possibly justify letting your family believe you were dead for 12 years? Michael was silent for a long moment, seeming to weigh his words carefully. "To protect you," he finally said. "To keep you and your mother alive." Amber stared at him, waiting for more. When nothing came, she shook her head in disgust. "That's it? That's your explanation? Some vague claim about protection?" "It's not vague to me." His voice had hardened. "I made a choice that night, the hardest choice of my life. I can live with you hating me. I can't live with you being dead." "What are you talking about?" Michael stood, pacing the small office. "That explosion wasn't an accident, Amber. It was deliberate, and I saw who set it." Amber felt as though the floor were tilting beneath her. "What?" "I was doing a final sweep of the East Wing when I saw them. 2 men I didn't recognize setting additional charges. They didn't see me. When I realized what was happening, I tried to get back to my team to warn them, but the first secondary explosion went off. I was thrown clear, out a service exit." "So why didn't you report what you saw? Why disappear?" "Because I recognized one of them, Amber. He was wearing a ski mask, but it slipped when the first charge detonated. It was Curtis Blackwood." The name hung in the air between them. Curtis Blackwood, the mayor of Oakwood at the time of the explosion. A powerful, connected man with ambitions for higher office. "That's insane," Amber said. "Why would the mayor blow up a chemical plant in his own city?" "Because Axiom Chemical was about to blow the whistle on illegal dumping that had been going on for years. Dumping that Blackwood had approved and profited from. They were going public the next day with evidence that the contamination in Miller Creek, the cancer cluster in the East Side neighborhoods, it was all connected to Axiom's disposal practices. Practices that Blackwood had personally signed off on." "And you knew this how?" "Because the plant manager, Dave Wilson, told me, off the record, 3 days before the explosion. He was gathering evidence, building a case. He was supposed to meet with EPA investigators the next morning." Michael's voice had taken on a distant quality, as if he were viewing the past through a long tunnel. "He died in the explosion too. Very convenient." Amber struggled to process what she was hearing. "So you're saying the mayor of Oakwood committed mass murder to cover up environmental crimes? And you ran away instead of exposing him?" "I tried to report it," Michael said, his voice tight. "The night of the explosion, after I regained consciousness, I called Frank Sullivan from a gas station payphone, told him what I'd seen. He told me to stay put, that he'd come get me, that we'd go to the state police together. And while I was waiting, a car pulled up. Not Frank's car. A black SUV with tinted windows. 2 men got out. the same ones I'd seen in the plant. They had guns, Amber. They knew my name. They knew where I lived. They knew about you and your mother. Sullivan betrayed you, Amber said, the pieces clicking into place. Michael nodded grimly. Frank and Blackwood went way back. College roommates. Frank owed his promotion to Blackwood's influence on the city council. So you just ran? Left us to fend for ourselves? The anger was returning, cutting through the shock. No, Michael said firmly. I made a deal, right there in that gas station parking lot, with guns pointed at me. I agreed to disappear, to never contact anyone from my old life, to never speak of what I'd seen. In exchange, they would leave you and your mother alone. Why would they agree to that? Why not just kill you too? Because 5 dead firefighters was already pushing it. Because they knew an investigation into my death, separate from the explosion, would raise too many questions because Frank convinced them it was cleaner this way. He paused. And because they had leverage, they made it very clear what would happen to you and your mother if I didn't cooperate or if I ever tried to contact you. Amber felt sick. And you believed them? You trusted the word of murderers? I had no choice. Frank arranged everything, the death certificate, the accelerated insurance payout, the closed investigation. He provided me with new identification, enough cash to get out of the country, made it clear I was to never return. So Frank Sullivan knows you're alive all this time? Michael nodded. He's my handler in a sense. Checks that I'm staying quiet, staying away. I talked to Sullivan a few days ago, Amber said. Showed him your Facebook profile. Michael went pale. So you what? He claimed not to recognize anything about it. But he knew, Michael said, standing abruptly. He knew someone had identified me. He began pacing the small office. We need to go, now. If Sullivan knows you're looking for me, if he suspects you've found me. He doesn't know I'm here, Amber interrupted. I told Mom I was taking a vacation to clear my head. No one knows I came to Costa Rica. Michael looked unconvinced. Sullivan has resources, connections. If he's worried about exposure, he'll be watching you. This is paranoid, Amber said. It's been 12 years. Blackwood isn't even mayor anymore. He lost the next election. He's a state senator now, Michael corrected her, with eyes on a congressional seat. The statute of limitations on environmental crimes might have passed, but there's no statute of limitations on murder. Amber tried to process everything she'd heard. It was too much, too outlandish, too dramatic. Part of her wanted to dismiss it all as the desperate justifications of a man who had abandoned his responsibilities. And yet, prove it, she said. Prove any of this is true. Michael stared at her for a long moment, then nodded slowly. He went to a filing cabinet in the corner, unlocked it with a key from his pocket, and removed a large manila envelope from the bottom drawer. He handed it to Amber. Inside were newspaper clippings about the explosion, investigation reports, many of the same documents Amber had already seen in her research. But there were also photographs, grainy, dark images that appeared to have been taken on an old cell phone. They showed 2 men in the chemical plant, one holding what looked like an explosive device. You took these that night? Amber asked, studying the images. Yes, when I first spotted them, before they saw me. I sent copies to a journalist a year after the explosion. Anonymous package mailed from Mexico. What happened? The journalist, Diane Reynolds from the Chicago Tribune, started asking questions in Oakwood. 2 weeks later, she was killed in what police called a random mugging. Nothing was stolen, just another convenient death. Amber felt a chill run through her. This is hard to believe, I know, Michael said quietly. If I were you, I wouldn't believe it either. It sounds like a conspiracy theory, like the desperate justifications of a man who abandoned his family. But it's the truth, Amber, I swear it. Why the Facebook profile? Why risk exposure after all these years? Michael looked away, shame evident in his expression, weakness, stupidity. After a decade, I started to think maybe it was safe. Blackwood was focused on his Senate career. The explosion was old news. I wanted to see if I could find out about you and your mother. See photos maybe, know that you were okay. We weren't okay, Amber said flatly. We were broken. I know, he whispered. I'm sorry. The apology, so inadequate for the magnitude of what he'd done, sparked Amber's anger anew. Sorry doesn't cover 12 years of grief, Dad. It doesn't erase what Mom went through, what she's still going through. Do you have any idea what it's like to watch your mother cry on your father's birthday every year? To have her still set a place for you at Christmas dinner? She never moved on, never even tried to date anyone else. Michael closed his eyes, pain etched in every line of his face. I never expected her to wait. I wanted her to find happiness again. Well, she didn't. She built her entire life around preserving your memory, your legacy. She started a foundation for children of fallen firefighters. She gives speeches about sacrifice and duty and honor. Amber's voice cracked. All for a man who chose to let her believe he was dead rather than fight for the truth. I was fighting for your lives, Michael said, voice rising. Every day of this exile has been a sacrifice to keep you both safe. Then why have the rules suddenly changed? Why is it safe for me to know you're alive now, but it wasn't for the past 12 years? Michael had no immediate answer for that. You should have trusted us with the truth, Amber continued. You should have found another way. Maybe, he conceded. But at the time, with guns to my head and explicit threats against my family, I made the choice I thought would keep you safest. He paused. What will you do now? It was the question Amber had been avoiding since she'd first seen his face at the marina. What would she do with this impossible truth? I don't know, she admitted. I need time to think. Your mother, Michael began hesitantly. How is she? How do you think she is? She lost the love of her life. Does she ever talk about me? Every day, Amber said. She keeps you alive in every conversation, every decision. She measures every man she meets against her memory of you, and they all fall short. She's lived 12 years as a grieving widow, faithful to a ghost. Michael turned away, but not before Amber saw tears in his eyes. You have to tell her, he said finally, his back still to her. Tell her what? That her husband chose to abandon her? That the life she's built memorializing you is based on a lie? Tell her I'm alive. Tell her why I did what I did. She deserves the truth. Amber laughed bitterly. Now you care about the truth? After 12 years of lies? I've always cared about the truth, Michael said, turning back to face her. I've always cared about your mother, about you. Everything I did was to protect you both. So, what's changed? Why is it suddenly safe for the truth to come out? Because you found me, Michael said simply. Because the secret is already compromised. And because, he hesitated, because I'm dying, Amber. The words hung in the air between them, heavy with finality. What? She whispered. Cancer. Pancreatic. Diagnosed 3 months ago. It's already spread. The doctors here give me 6 months, maybe less. Amber stared at him, medical training automatically kicking in to assess his appearance with new eyes. The weight loss she'd attributed to age and lifestyle, the slight yellowish tint to his skin that tropical sun couldn't fully explain, the careful way he moved as if to avoid pain. That's why I got careless with the Facebook profile, he continued. I knew time was running out. I wanted some connection, even if distant, before it was too late. You should be in a hospital, Amber said, nurse mode engaging as a defense against the emotional chaos. There are treatments, clinical trials. I've made my peace with it, Michael interrupted. What I can't make peace with is dying without seeing your mother one more time, without explaining to her face why I did what I did. You're asking me to bring her here, to upend her entire understanding of the past 12 years when you only have months left. That's unbelievably cruel. What's cruel is letting her live the rest of her life never knowing the truth, never having the choice to forgive me or not. Amber found herself at an impossible crossroads. Tell her mother and destroy the foundation of her rebuilt life, or keep this secret and deny them both the chance for closure. I need time, she said again. This is too much to process. Michael nodded. I understand, but we may not have much time. If Sullivan suspects you found me... Stop, Amber cut him off. Just stop with the conspiracy theories for a minute. I need to think clearly. She stood, needing physical distance. I'm going back to my hotel. I need space to figure out what to do. Amber, Michael said, his voice gentle, whatever you decide, you should know I never stopped loving you or your mother, not for a single day. She looked at the stranger who was her father, the man who had taught her to ride a bike, who had checked under her bed for monsters, who had shaped her understanding of duty and sacrifice, and who had also taught her, through his absence, about loss and resilience. Love should mean more than that, she said quietly, and walked out of the workshop. The walk back to where she'd parked her rental car was a blur. Amber moved on autopilot, mind spinning with everything she'd learned. Her father was alive. He claimed to have witnessed a criminal conspiracy. He'd chosen exile to protect them. He was dying, Each revelation was too enormous to fully comprehend, yet all demanded immediate action. At her hotel, she locked the door and sat on the bed, staring at the wall. What was the right thing to do? Tell her mother everything. Protect her from a truth that would shatter everything she believed. Report what she'd learned to authorities. Keep it secret. She picked up her phone a dozen times to call her mother, putting it down each time before dialing. What could she possibly say? "Hi, Mom. Guess what? Dad's alive, but he's also dying, and oh, by the way, the former mayor committed mass murder and has been threatening our lives for 12 years. It was absurd. All of it. Yet the evidence was compelling. The photographs, her father's detailed account, Sullivan's strange reaction when she'd shown him the Facebook profile. It all fit together in a terrible, plausible way. Her phone rang, startling her so badly she nearly dropped it. The screen showed her mother's name. "Hey, Mum," she answered, fighting to keep her voice normal. "Amber, thank God. Are you okay?" Sarah sounded frantic. "I'm fine. What's wrong? Where are you right now? Exactly where?" A chill ran through Amber. "I'm in Costa Rica, like I told you, on vacation. You need to come home. Right now. Today." "Mom? What's going on?" "You're scaring me. Someone broke into our house last night. They went through all your father's old things, his files, photographs, everything." Amber felt the blood drain from her face. "Were you hurt?" "I wasn't home. I was at the foundation fundraiser, remember? But the police said whoever it was knew exactly what they were looking for. The only things missing are your father's old case notebooks, the ones where he used to document suspicious fires." Michael's voice echoed in Amber's mind. "If Sullivan knows you're looking for me, if he suspects you've found me, when are you coming home?" Sarah asked. Amber made a split-second decision. "I can't right now, Mom. I need you to do something for me. Pack a bag and go stay with Aunt Linda for a few days." "What? Why?" "Please, just trust me. I can't explain over the phone, but it's important. Don't tell anyone where you're going, not even the police. Just say you're staying with friends because the break-in scared you." "Amber, you're frightening me. What's going on?" "I'll explain everything when I see you. Just promise me you'll go to Aunt Linda's. Today." Sarah was silent for a long moment. "This is about your father, isn't it? You found something." Amber hesitated. "Mum, don't lie to me. I'm not stupid, Amber. You've been asking questions, digging into the explosion again. And now this break-in. It's connected, isn't it? Please, just go to Aunt Linda's. I'll call you there tonight." Another pause. "All right, I'll go. But I expect answers, Amber. Real ones. You'll get them. I promise." After hanging up, Amber sat frozen, heart racing. The break-in confirmed her father's warnings weren't mere paranoia. Someone was worried about what she might have discovered, worried enough to search for evidence 12 years after the fact. She needed to warn her father. Grabbing her purse, she hurried back to the marina, praying he would still be at his workshop. The sun was setting as she arrived, casting long shadows across the waterfront. Mike's marine repair was closed, metal security shutters pulled down over the windows and doors. Amber swore under her breath. Where would he go after work? She had no way to contact him, no idea where he lived. A voice behind her made her jump. "He's not there." She turned to find Miguel, the bartender from Playa Hermosa, standing a few feet away. "You followed me?" Mike called. "Asked me to watch out for you." Miguel's expression was sympathetic, but wary. "He said you might be in danger. Where is he?" "I need to talk to him." Miguel studied her for a moment, then nodded. "Come, I'll take you." He led her to a battered pickup truck and drove inland, away from the tourist areas, into the hills overlooking the coast. They followed increasingly narrow and rough roads until reaching a small house set back among the trees, almost invisible from the road. A single light burned in the window. "Wait here," Miguel said, getting out and approaching the house. He knocked in a distinctive pattern. 3 quick raps, a pause, 2 more. The door opened slightly, and after a brief exchange, Miguel waved Amber over. Michael opened the door wider as she approached. He looked even more tired than he had earlier, the lines in his face deeper in the harsh porch light. "Someone broke into Mom's house," Amber said without preamble. "They took your old case notebooks." Michael's face went grim. "When?" "Last night, while she was at a fundraiser." He ushered her inside, nodding thanks to Miguel, who departed with a warning to keep the lights low. The interior of the house was spare but neat, a fisherman's cottage converted for longer-term living. No photographs or personal mementos were visible, nothing that would hint at his former life or identity. "They're tying up loose ends," Michael said, pacing the small living room. Sullivan must have gotten spooked when you showed him that profile. Started wondering what else you might have discovered. I told Mom to go stay with Aunt Linda for a few days. Good. That's good. He ran a hand through his gray hair. But it won't be enough. If they're moving this aggressively, they won't stop looking. I still can't believe this is real, Amber said, sinking onto a worn sofa. 24 hours ago, my biggest worry was whether I'd get the weekend shift next month. Now I'm hiding in a safe house because a state senator wants me dead. It's insane. I understand how it sounds, Michael said. But the threats were very real 12 years ago, and from what you're telling me, they still are. So what do we do now? Amber asked, suddenly exhausted. Michael was silent for a long moment. We have evidence, he said finally. The photographs I took that night. They're not great quality, but they clearly show Blackwood and his associate placing explosives. Why didn't you use them before? Because photographs alone weren't enough. Not against someone as powerful as Blackwood. I needed corroborating testimony, documentation of the environmental crimes they were covering up. He paused. And because the threat to you and your mother was immediate and explicit, I couldn't risk it. And now? Now we have no choice. They know you've been asking questions. They know you traveled to Costa Rica right after talking to Sullivan. It won't take them long to connect the dots, especially if they've hacked your email or phone. Amber felt a chill. You think they can do that? I think a man who arranged the murder of 5 firefighters and a journalist won't hesitate to use whatever means necessary to protect himself. Michael sat across from her, leaning forward intently. We need to get this evidence to someone who can act on it properly. Someone outside Blackwood's sphere of influence. The FBI, maybe. Or a major newspaper, the kind with resources to protect their sources and investigate thoroughly. He thought for a moment. There's a journalist I've been following, Megan Chen at the Washington Post. She specializes in political corruption investigations, has a solid track record of exposing powerful people. And you think she'd believe this story? That the evidence we have is enough? The photos are a start, but we need more. Michael stood, wincing slightly at what Amber now recognized as cancer pain. There was another plant manager, Wilson's assistant, Trevor Lambert. He knew about the contamination, too, was helping gather evidence. After the explosion, he disappeared, changed his name, moved away. But Sullivan once let slip that he'd relocated somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. You think this Lambert could corroborate your story? If we can find him, yes. He'd be the missing piece, a witness to the environmental crimes that motivated the explosion. Amber felt overwhelmed. This is a lot, Dad. You're talking about tracking down someone who's deliberately hidden himself, convincing him to risk his life to testify against a powerful politician, all while staying ahead of people who are actively looking for us. I know it's a lot, Michael said gently, and I wouldn't ask it of you if there were any other option. But they already know you're involved. You're already in danger. Our only way out is through. Gather enough evidence that going public is safer than staying hidden. Amber stood, needing to move, to think. I need to call Mom. Make sure she's safe. Use my phone, Michael said, handing her an old flip phone. Prepaid, harder to trace, and keep it brief. Sarah answered on the first ring. Hello? Mom, it's me. Are you at Aunt Linda's? Yes, just arrived. Amber, what is going on? The police called again. They want to know if anything else is missing. Don't talk to the police anymore, not until I get home. Amber hesitated. Mom, I found something in Costa Rica. Something big. I can't explain over the phone, but I'm coming home soon. We'll talk then. Is it about your father? Sarah asked, her voice smaller than Amber had ever heard it. Amber looked across the room at Michael, who was watching her with an unreadable expression. Yes, she said finally. It's about Dad. After the call, Amber felt the weight of all the impossible choices before her. Tell her mother the truth now, over the phone. Bring her to Costa Rica to reunite with the husband she'd mourned for 12 years. Keep her in the dark until they had gathered more evidence. There were no good options, only less terrible ones. We need a plan, she said to Michael. A real one. He nodded. We leave tomorrow, early. There's a flight to Mexico City at 7 a.m. From there we can book separate flights to the U.S. using cash. You're coming back after 12 years? I have to, Michael said. The evidence is there, Lambert is there, and... He hesitated. I need to see your mother. Whether we succeed or fail, I need to look her in the eyes and explain myself. Amber studied her father. This ghost made flesh, this man who was both intimately familiar and completely unknown to her. She might not forgive you. she said quietly. I might not forgive you either. I know, he replied. I'm not asking for forgiveness, just the chance to tell the truth. That night, Amber slept fitfully on the sofa while Michael took the bedroom. She dreamed of explosions, of faceless men with guns, of her mother standing alone by an empty grave. She woke at dawn to find her father already up, packing a small bag with minimal possessions. Take only what you absolutely need, he advised. We need to travel light, avoid checking bags. I don't even have a change of clothes here, Amber pointed out. Everything's at my hotel. Michael frowned. Too risky to go back there. They might be watching it. I'll loan you what I can. We'll buy what else you need in Mexico City during our layover. The paranoia was beginning to feel suffocating, yet Amber couldn't dismiss it, not after the break-in at her mother's house. She used Michael's phone to book her flight from Mexico City to Seattle, where Lambert was rumored to be living. Michael would fly to Chicago, then drive to Aunt Linda's house in Indiana to see Sarah. Once you find Lambert, call this number, Michael said, writing on a scrap of paper. It's a secure messaging service. Leave a message for fishermen. I'll check it every 12 hours. This is like something out of a spy movie, Amber said, half joking to mask her growing anxiety. I wish it were fiction, Michael replied grimly. Miguel arrived an hour later to drive them to the airport. The roads were nearly empty at that early hour, dawn just beginning to lighten the eastern sky. Amber sat in the back seat, watching her father's profile in the dim light, trying to reconcile this cautious, weathered man with the confident hero of her childhood memories. They were about 15 minutes from the airport when Miguel suddenly slowed, then pulled onto a side road. What's wrong? Michael asked, instantly alert. Police checkpoint ahead, Miguel said quietly. Not normal at this hour. Michael and Amber exchanged a look of alarm. Could be routine, Miguel added, but his tone suggested he didn't believe it. Is there another way to the airport? Michael asked. Miguel nodded. Longer, rougher roads, but yes. Take it. They backtracked, then turned onto an unpaved road that wound through dense vegetation. The ride became bumpy, progress slower. Amber checked her watch. Their margin of time before the flight was narrowing dangerously. When they finally reached the airport's perimeter road, Miguel pointed out a service entrance. Less security there, he explained. Used by airport workers. Michael turned to Amber. Listen carefully. We go in separately. If anything feels wrong, if anyone approaches you or seems to be watching too closely, abort. Don't get on the plane, don't call me. Go to the American Embassy in San Jose instead. Dad, promise me, Amber, your safety comes first. She nodded reluctantly. I promise. Michael squeezed her hand. The first physical contact between them since their reunion. I'm sorry for all of this. For everything. I know, she said, and was surprised to realize she meant it. Whatever his failings, whatever pain his choices had caused, she believed he had acted out of love and fear for their safety. Miguel dropped Michael at the service entrance first. Amber watched him walk away, a solitary figure with a small backpack, shoulders squared with the same determination she remembered from childhood. He didn't look back. 10 minutes later, Miguel left her at the main terminal. Be careful, he said as she got out. Mike is a good man. Whatever happened before, he has been a good man here. Inside the airport, Amber moved through security without incident. The flight to Mexico City boarded on time. As the plane taxied for takeoff, she scanned the cabin looking for her father but didn't see him. Had he made it aboard? Was he in a different section? Or had something gone wrong? The unease followed her to Mexico City, where she navigated the sprawling airport with nervous energy, constantly checking over her shoulder. During her 5-hour layover, she bought a change of clothes and basic toiletries as planned. When it was time to board her flight to Seattle, she still hadn't spotted Michael anywhere. The flight to Seattle was interminable. Amber tried to sleep but couldn't, her mind racing with contingency plans. What if Michael had been detained? What if Lambert couldn't be found? What if Sullivan's men were already waiting in Seattle? By the time she landed, she had worked herself into such a state of anxiety that every fellow passenger seemed suspicious, every airport employee a potential threat. She took a shuttle to a mid-range hotel downtown, paying cash as Michael had instructed, and used the hotel's computer to begin her search for Trevor Lambert. This proved more difficult than anticipated. Lambert was a common enough name, and without knowing what alias he might be using, Amber had little to go on. She started with professional associations, chemical engineers, environmental scientists, searching membership directories for anyone who had joined in the months following the explosion 12 years ago. After hours of fruitless searching, she switched tactics. If Lambert had been concerned about the environmental impact of Axiom Chemicals' practices, perhaps he'd remained involved in environmental causes. She began searching news articles about environmental activism in the Pacific Northwest, looking for any familiar faces in the accompanying photographs. It was tedious work, and by midnight, her eyes were burning with fatigue. She was about to give up for the night when a small article about a protest against a proposed pipeline caught her attention. The photograph showed a group of protesters holding signs, and in the background, barely visible, was a bearded man in glasses who looked vaguely familiar. The caption didn't identify all the protesters, but it mentioned the organization behind the demonstration, Cascadia Environmental Defense Coalition. Amber quickly found their website, which included staff bios, and there he was, under the name Thomas Lawton, serving as their scientific advisor. The beard was fuller, the glasses different, but the eyes were unmistakably those of Trevor Lambert as she remembered him from her father's company picnics. She had found him. Now she just needed to make contact without scaring him off or exposing him to danger. The next morning, Amber headed to the address listed on the Coalition's website, a small office in a converted warehouse in Seattle's industrial district. She had considered calling ahead, but decided a face-to-face approach would be harder to dismiss. The reception area was staffed by a young woman with dreadlocks who looked up from her computer with a friendly smile. "Can I help you?" "I hope so," Amber said. "I'm looking for Thomas Lawton. Is he in today?" The receptionist's smile dimmed slightly. "Do you have an appointment?" "No, but it's important that I speak with him. It's about Axiom Chemical." The change in the receptionist's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. Her smile vanished entirely, replaced by wary suspicion. "I don't know what you're talking about, and Dr. Lawton isn't available." So she had struck a nerve. Lambert was definitely here, and he was still hiding from his past. "Please," Amber said, lowering her voice. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I'm Michael Donovan's daughter." The receptionist's eyes widened slightly, recognition flickering across her features before she controlled her expression. "Wait here," she said, and disappeared through a door behind the desk. Several minutes passed before the door opened again. A bearded man in his late 50s emerged, regarding Amber with a mixture of caution and curiosity. "Come with me," he said without preamble, leading her through the door and down a hallway to a small office. He closed the door firmly behind them. "Who are you really?" he asked, not inviting her to sit. "I told your receptionist the truth. I'm Amber Donovan, Michael Donovan's daughter." Lambert, or Lawton as he was now known, studied her face intently. "You look like him," he said finally. "Around the eyes. You knew my father." Everyone at Axiom knew Chief Donovan. He was a regular presence at the plant, conducting safety inspections, running drills. Lambert's expression softened slightly. "He was a good man. I was sorry to hear about his death in the explosion." "He's not dead," Amber said bluntly. Lambert went very still. "That's not funny." "It's not a joke. My father is alive. He faked his death after witnessing Mayor Blackwood planting explosives at the facility." The color drained from Lambert's face. He moved to his desk on unsteady legs and sank into his chair. That's not possible." "It's the truth. I found him in Costa Rica 3 days ago." Amber took out her phone and showed him a photo she'd surreptitiously taken of Michael in his workshop, grainy and at an angle, but clearly recognizable. Lambert stared at the image for a long moment. "My God," he whispered, "it really is him. He said you were helping Dave Wilson gather evidence about illegal chemical dumping, evidence that implicated Blackwood." Lambert's eyes snapped up to meet hers. "Who else have you told about this?" "No one. My father warned me to be careful who I trusted." "Your father is a smart man." Lambert ran a hand through his graying beard. "Yes, Wilson and I were building a case. Axiom had been dumping untreated waste into Miller Creek for years, with Blackwood's knowledge and approval. He received consulting fees through a shell company to look the other way. When cancer rates in the nearby neighborhood spiked, Wilson couldn't live with it anymore. We were going to the EPA, and then the explosion happened." Lambert nodded grimly. "Convenient timing, wasn't it? The explosion destroyed not only the evidence we'd gathered, but also the facility itself, making it impossible to prove what had been happening there. My father saw Blackwood planting explosives, took photographs." Lambert leaned forward, suddenly intense. He has proof? Actual evidence? Yes, but it's not enough on its own. We need your testimony about the environmental crimes, the motive behind the explosion. My testimony? Lambert laughed bitterly. I've spent 12 years hiding from these people, Ms. Donovan. Changed my name, moved across the country, rebuilt my entire life. You're asking me to throw all that away to put a target on my back? I'm asking you to help bring justice for 5 murdered firefighters, for Dave Wilson, for all the people who got sick from that contaminated water. Justice is a luxury for those who can afford the consequences, Lambert said, but his voice lacked conviction. What exactly is your plan here? My father is meeting with a journalist from the Washington Post. With your testimony and his photographs, plus documentation of the illegal dumping if you still have it, we'd have enough to go public, enough that killing us would only confirm our story. Lambert was silent for a long time, conflict evident on his face. Finally, he sighed heavily. I kept copies, off-site backups that Wilson didn't even know about, soil samples, water analysis reports, internal memos, payment records to Blackwood's shell company. I couldn't bring myself to destroy them, even though keeping them put me at risk. Hope surged through Amber. Where are they? In a storage unit in Portland, under yet another name. He hesitated. If I help you with this, I need guarantees. Witness protection, immunity from prosecution for my role at Axiom. We can arrange that, Amber said with more confidence than she felt. But we need to move quickly. People connected to Blackwood already know I've been asking questions. They broke into my mother's house, searched my father's old files. Lambert paled again. Then they're already tying up loose ends, including me, potentially. All the more reason to go public immediately. It's our only protection now. He nodded slowly, coming to a decision. I'll need a day to retrieve the documents. Then we can meet your father and this journalist. My father's headed to Indiana first, to see my mother. Amber hesitated. She still doesn't know he's alive. Lambert winced. That's going to be a difficult reunion. To put it mildly, Amber agreed. They arranged to meet the following evening. Lambert would drive to Portland overnight, retrieve the documents from storage, and return to Seattle. Amber would contact her father through the secure messaging service to coordinate their next steps. As she left the Environmental Coalition offices, Amber felt a mix of triumph and trepidation. They were making progress. Lambert's testimony and documentation would provide the crucial context for her father's photographs. But they were also racing against an invisible clock, never knowing how close Blackwood's people might be. Back at her hotel, Amber used a new prepaid phone to call the messaging service. Message for fishermen, she said when prompted. Package located in Seattle. Contents as expected. Arranging delivery tomorrow evening. She could only hope her father would understand the meaning. That she'd found Lambert, who still had evidence, and they were meeting the next day. Now came the hardest part. Waiting. Amber ordered room service, not wanting to venture out unnecessarily, and tried to distract herself with television. But her mind kept returning to her mother. By now, Michael might already be with her. What would that reunion be like? 12 years of grief and mourning, only to discover it had all been based on a lie. Would Sarah be able to forgive him? Would she understand his reasons? Or would the betrayal be too great to overcome? Amber didn't realize she'd fallen asleep until a knock at her door jolted her awake. The room was dark, the television still playing quietly. She checked the time. Just past 2 a.m. Who would be knocking at this hour? Moving quietly to the door, she peered through the peephole. A hotel employee in uniform stood outside, holding what appeared to be an envelope. Ms. Johnson, he called through the door using the alias she'd checked in under. Message for you at the front desk. They asked me to deliver it. Amber hesitated. She hadn't given this hotel as a contact to anyone. Not Lambert, not her father. No one should know she was here. Just leave it at the door, please, she called back. I need a signature, Mum. Hotel policy for secure messages. Warning bells rang in Amber's mind. This wasn't right. She backed away from the door, looking around for an escape route. The window. She was on the 4th floor. The knocking came again, more insistent. Ms. Johnson? It's important. Amber grabbed her purse and room key, moving silently to the bathroom. She closed the door, then turned on the shower at full blast. With luck, it would sound like she was in there, buying her a few more minutes. She climbed onto the toilet, then up to the small window above. It was narrow but should be just wide enough for her to squeeze through. It opened onto a fire escape. Perfect. As she worked the window open, she heard a new sound from the main room, the distinct click of a keycard in the door lock. Whoever was outside wasn't waiting for her to answer anymore. Heart pounding, Amber pushed herself through the narrow opening, scraping her shoulders painfully against the frame. She landed on the metal grating of the fire escape, just as she heard the bathroom door being pushed open. "She's gone! Check the window!" Amber didn't wait to see who would emerge. She raced down the fire escape as quietly as possible, the cold metal painful against her sock-clad feet. She'd left her shoes behind in her haste. At the bottom, she dropped the last few feet to the alley below, stumbling slightly on impact. The service exit of the hotel was just ahead. Beyond that would be the street. People, safety in numbers. She had just reached the exit when a figure stepped out of the shadows, blocking her path. Amber skidded to a halt, ready to turn and run the other way when the figure spoke. "Amber Donovan?" It was a woman's voice, unfamiliar but not threatening. Amber remained poised to flee. "Who's asking?" The woman stepped forward into the dim light of a security lamp. She was in her 40s, Asian American, dressed in jeans and a dark jacket. "My name is Megan Chen. I'm a journalist with the Washington Post." Amber stared in disbelief. "How did you find me?" "Your father sent me. Said you might be in danger." Chen glanced past Amber toward the fire escape, which appears to be accurate. "We need to go, now." "How do I know you're really who you say you are?" Chen pulled out her press credentials. "Your father said to tell you the Dalmatian always faced left. He said you'd understand." It was true. The decal on Michael's helmet had been distinctive, because the Dalmatian faced left instead of right, the result of a manufacturing error that had become his personal trademark. It was the kind of detail only someone who had spoken to her father would know. "There are men in my room," Amber said, glancing back nervously. "My car's this way," Chen replied, gesturing toward the street. "Let's not be here when they come looking." They hurried through the alley to where a nondescript sedan was parked. Chen unlocked it remotely as they approached. "Get in," she urged, "and stay low." As they pulled away from the curb, Amber saw two men emerge from the hotel's main entrance, scanning the street urgently. Chen drove past them at a measured pace, not too fast to draw attention, but not lingering either. "How did they find me?" Amber asked once they were several blocks away. "Credit card tracking, maybe. Cell phone. Hard to say." Chen navigated through Seattle's late-night traffic with practiced ease. "Your father warned me they have resources, connections in law enforcement." "Where is my father?" "Is he safe?" "He made it to Indiana. He's with your mother now." Chen's expression softened slightly. "He said to tell you it went better than expected." Amber felt a surge of relief, followed immediately by anxiety. "And my contact? Lambert? They might go after him too." "I've already reached out. He's gone to ground, but he's safe. We'll rendezvous with him tomorrow at a secure location." Chen glanced at Amber. "In the meantime, you're staying at my hotel, under guard." "Guard?" "The Post takes threats to sources very seriously. We have a security team for situations like this. They're already in place." The reality of their situation was beginning to sink in. "So this is really happening? You're going to publish the story?" "If the evidence holds up, yes. Your father showed me the photographs. They're compelling but would be dismissed as inconclusive on their own. If Lambert really has documentation of the environmental crimes and Blackwood's involvement, that changes everything. It establishes motive, makes the case much stronger." "And you think that will be enough? Against someone as powerful as Blackwood?" Chen's expression hardened. "Senator Blackwood is not the first powerful man I've investigated, Ms. Donovan, nor the most dangerous. What protects us is the same thing that threatens him: publicity. The more people who know about this story, the safer we all are." They arrived at a large downtown hotel, much nicer than the one Amber had fled. Chen bypassed the main lobby, using a service entrance instead. They took a freight elevator to the 10th floor, where a man in a suit was waiting in the hallway. "All clear," he reported to Chen. "Room's been swept. Security's in place at both ends of the hallway." "Thank you, Marcus." Chen turned to Amber. "Marcus is our head of security. He'll be outside your door tonight." The room was a suite, spacious and elegant. Amber suddenly became aware of her disheveled appearance. Sock feet, rumpled clothes, wild-eyed from her escape down the fire escape. "There's a robe in the bathroom," Chen said, noting her discomfort. "And I've arranged for clothes to be delivered in the morning. Your sizes were in your hospital employee file." "You've been thorough," Amber observed. not sure whether to be impressed or disturbed by this level of preparation. "It's my job," Chen replied simply. "Get some rest. Tomorrow will be busy. Your father and Lambert should both arrive by noon, and we'll need to review all the evidence before I file the story." My father's coming here tomorrow? The thought of seeing him again so soon was unexpectedly emotional. What about my mother?